Society Matters.
Welcome, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Dr. Susanne Seperson, and this is our 6th episode of the podcast, Antisemitism and the United Nations in Society on hmTv. I'm delighted that our guest today, Assemblyman Charles Lavine, has agreed to continue on for a part 2 of our discussion that we just had previously. So it's my pleasure to introduce him to you. And as I said earlier, what prompted me to invite him is the fact that he is the president of the New York chapter of the National Association of Jewish Legislators and a member of its National Board of Directors. And I invited him specifically because, frankly, I had never heard of this group, although I now know that it's been around for over 30 years. So with that, we will continue where we left off, and we were talking about education and the role of education in combating anti-Semitism and writ large hatred, racism of all different kinds. So if you'd like to continue on that thought.
American education should promote democracy. And where we ended up speaking in the earlier segment was on the subject of instruction in our public schools. And this has been a national problem for 30 to 35 years. We in education have taught our children primarily over the course of these years how to take tests and how to pass tests. And this goes back to No Child Left Behind and quote unquote accountability. It's time to free our educators to really teach. And we were speaking about the Second World War and the ritualized slaughter of Jews and gypsies and gay people. All of the Second World War, which is the most profound experience of the previous century, all of that is left to be taught in less than an hour or two. So there is literally no way to be able to instruct on the murder of the Jews and the racism of the Nazi and his allies in that short a period of time. And we are suffering as a result of that. And the Second World War was profound. The returning troops came back to a country that needed change. It needed change in terms of protection of people's civil rights. And anytime civil rights are protected, Jews and every other marginalized group is protected as well.
I hear you, and you actually brought me to my question that I had. I said, they often say education is the key to combating anti-Semitism, and New York is one of 29 states in the nation that mandates Holocaust education. But as you point out, it is so limited. It comes at the end of the year when they're busy preparing for tests, and it gets very short shrift. I'll just share with you my daughter, who graduated high school many, many, many years ago. And she was in the AP and all of that sort of stuff, but she had a book that they used from written by a professor that was well known from Columbia University. And I read, because I'm always curious to know what it said, and there was one line in this entire fat textbook that said, "And the Jews suffered." And I went to the school principal, not the principal, the social studies director, who's a wonderful man. And I said to him, "Do you really think that's sufficient?" And he said, "No." He said, "That's why we do all the supplemental reading." And I was very happy to read that and hear that. And they do, and they did. But I said to myself, okay, they do it in this class. What about all the other classes? And I would just like to add, 5 states have permissive statutes, 17 have Holocaust education commissions or task force, and 11 have no legislation legislations or commissions regarding Holocaust education. And here we are in the Nassau County Holocaust Memorial Museum and Tolerance Center, which has had tens of thousands of students visit the museum and learn about the Holocaust. Yet the incidence of anti-Semitism, especially among young people at all ages now, it's getting younger and younger, has increased dramatically. So what do you think we should do about all of this?
Well, a couple of things that we're doing, and not that it's first and foremost, but over the years I've been in office, I've been very pleased to have been able to drive some major grants, capital grants, and also some programmatic funding to hmTV. The Governor Hochul was here not too long ago. I think it was within the last year, promoting tolerance, and we simply need to do more on almost every level. And let me just share with you an experience that my wife Ronnie had. She taught first in the South Bronx and then in the city of Glen Cove. And one day, a teaching assistant approached her and asked her this question: Can my wife, can Ronnie help? Because she had to write, the assistant, a paper on some guy called Hitler. And so Ronnie controlled herself. These are not fun things to discuss. They're utterly tragic. And we have to be cautious at what age we begin to instruct. But even before children are taught about the dangers of fascism and imperialism and authoritarianism, even before that, they have to be taught to be good citizens, and the rest will work itself out. We nationally are today suffering as a result of this inability, our collective inability to be able to produce good citizens in our schools.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'll just share with you that when I was in elementary school, also a very long time ago, every day after the Star Spangled Banner or the Pledge of Allegiance, we did a proverb from Poor Richard's Almanac by
Benjamin Franklin.
That's it. And a couple of them always stayed with me. And one of them was, you can't judge a book by its cover. And that was teaching, and this was in first and second grade, I mean, really young. That was teaching people to respect each other. You know, just because you might look different than me, it doesn't mean that we're different inside. Or as I heard Bill Clinton and Elie Wiesel talk about the fact that we are 99% similar, but we only focus on the 1% difference.
So very true, and it's important to remember, especially today, that Franklin was one of our founders, and that our founders, our American founders, warts and all,
right.
And after all, even today we all have warts, but they were the product of the Enlightenment. They viewed themselves as being the best intellectuals of their generation, and they gave us a democratic framework unlike any other that had ever existed. And that framework requires that we are all equal. No one is superior to anyone else. Now, the great irony was Jefferson and the others were slaveholders, but they managed somehow to draft language into our founding documents that meant and guaranteed that it wouldn't be long before the belief in equality would reign. And so fascinating, but that's part of being an American. We are not a theocracy,
right.
And we're designed not to be a theocracy. And I worry today that too many of my colleagues would prefer to go back to a theocratic form of government, and that is not going to be good for any of us.
I was going to say that's not, in my humble opinion, not a positive direction, because then we're getting into, well, whose theocracy should rule? So I totally agree with you, on that. And I would say another major feature besides the Bill of Rights and all of that is that we have a system where it's self-correcting. So it might make mistakes, as the Dred Scott decision, so on and so forth, but there is a mechanism for self-correction. It's dynamic. And frankly, that's what gives me hope, because, there's ups and downs, but there's always an up after a down. So that's what makes me happy. And I only wish that the education of our children, that they were taught more history, more context, so that they don't say some guy or some terrible thing should happen, to change. So I'm going to ask you, I know historically, and many people say, and I agree with this part, children learn values from their parents. And if their parents belong to this church or mosque or synagogue or whatever, as long as there's respect for the other, those are free choices. But in schools, we learned what I'll call a civil religion of respect for each other. That, to me, is totally missing. So what do you think, two parts, what do you think we can do about that? And what do you think the role of parents should be when children from marginalized groups are looked down upon? And how do they maintain a positive self-image?
What's the old line from South Pacific?
You've got to be taught
to hate. Yes. And unfortunately, when we are nationally in positions of economic fear and chaos, we are basically manufacturing a huge petri dish in which hatred will grow. And civil discourse is extraordinarily important, and not imposing anyone's faith on anybody else is extraordinarily important. And I'll share this with you. On the floor of the State Assembly, during debates, I have heard some of my colleagues offer points that are nothing more and nothing less than their religious view. We are a secular nation, and if we lose that status, America will fail, and there will be much, much more hatred. And again, as we've said before, that's not going to be good for any of us.
And I agree with you, but I would think that those politicians are pandering to their base, to their constituents for re-election. But the truth of the matter is they could take, if they were smart enough, to take those very tenets that they believe in and universalize them. So it's not just for one or against another group, so that the good feelings flow across. I mean, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. That goes across. I did some research on this, 10, 12, every religion has some version of that.
Exactly.
And somewhere along the line, that has gotten lost.
Well, from your mouth to my colleagues' ears.
Thank you for that. So moving on to what the existing situation at colleges and frankly, in elementary schools, high schools, public schools, the case of Israel and Gaza is so caught up in the anti-Semitism issues that it's not healthy for anyone. The Jews are the canaries in the coal mine. But one of the arguments, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based on race, color, or national origin in any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So it requires people to be treated fairly, equally, regardless of their ethnicity, ancestry, country of origin, when federally funded programs are involved. So what do you think should be done, particularly to universities and schools? Should they have their 501c3 nonprofit status removed?
If they don't comply with the civil rights law, they have to face sanctions and penalties. At the same time, I think we have to be extraordinarily cautious about anyone in government who wants to politicize anti-Semitism. So this is the balance that we face. And to be sure, I have condemned what happened at Columbia. I have condemned the wishy-washy responses of some of the leaders of our major universities who testified in Washington. But we have to be very cautious and not employ a sledgehammer when a scalpel is what's needed.
Absolutely. So let me ask you if you have any thoughts about why do you think so many young people today, people in the media, are anti-Israel and pro-Hamas? I mean, and I don't mean that they want, humanitarian aid to the Gazans or anything like that. They literally stand there and say, we are pro-Hamas, we are Hamas. So there's no confusion about who they're advocating for.
You are entirely correct. Not every student on every campus who stood to protest what some of them viewed as eventually a far too heavy-handed, ham-handed Israeli response in Gaza is an anti-Semite. I have relatives in Israel who have been in the protests against Netanyahu. And the number of people in Israel who have stood in these protests is profound. It's hundreds of thousands of people. If we had as many people, the percentage of our population protesting here in the United States, it would be 20 million people out on the streets. So, yes, some of these folks are dyed-in-the-wool Jew haters. There's no question about it. And to them, and this is kind of interesting in a way that I hope to touch upon a little bit, you don't have to be an anti-Semite to detest even some of the Israeli actions, the governmental actions. The Israeli pilots are protesting. Pilots of the Israeli Air Force are protesting. And by the way, let me go off on a little bit of a tangent. My friend Arthur Katz, who is very involved in Jewish causes here in New York and nationally, once sent me a poster. And it's a poster depicting tailfin after tailfin after tailfin of Israeli planes with the Star of David. And the legend under it, what's written is Jews, not so easy to blank with anymore, which hangs in my office in my house. But I fear that, and I hope I'm wrong, but I fear that there's going to be, in the days to come, there's going to be more anger in America and nationally with Israeli tactics on the West Bank and in Gaza. And my fear is this: Israelis, and there may be a good part of this as well, Israelis and American Jews are going to all be lumped together. Now, maybe that's not such a bad thing in some ways, and let me try to clarify a little bit. I've always wondered when people ask, "What's your nationality?" Well, my ancestors, going back a couple of generations, were from Lithuania, from Ukraine, from Russia. But I'm not Lithuanian. I'm not Ukrainian. I'm not Russian. I'm a Jew, and I have wondered at times if it wouldn't be better for me, and I may just end up doing this. When people ask, "What's your nationality?" I'm going to just say Israeli. I'm going to say Israeli.
Whoa.
I have family in Israel. And while I am extraordinarily unhappy with Netanyahu and his policies, I can't say that I'm extraordinarily happy with Trump and his policies either, but in a lot of ways I view myself as being Israeli. But I don't think too many American Jews see the proposition that way. But my worry is this, that in days to come, if the Israeli policies continue, it's not only going to displease a huge chunk of the Israeli population, in fact, probably the majority of the Israeli population, but it's going to serve as a vehicle, unfortunately, for people to point fingers not simply at Netanyahu, but at you and at me and at every Jew, whether we support Netanyahu or we don't support Netanyahu. So it's never been easy to be a Jew, and I don't suspect it ever will be.
I hear what you're saying. I'm going to ask you, please, as much as you identify with Judaism, with the Jews, and with Israel, I hope that you don't say that we're all Israelis. So I have to tell you, I was born in Germany, post-World War II, and I identify as an American. I have one cousin in Israel who happens to be Orthodox and is very pro-Netanyahu. But my feeling is the Jews in Israelis, they're pretty smart people. They'll figure it out. So I'm happy to leave it to them because my children are not fighting. My children are not at risk of being captured. So I always say this, I let them figure it out. I have complete confidence that they have elections, they have a system. One of the things I can't understand, I actually mentioned this at the UN to one of the retired Supreme Court justices of Israel. I said, why don't they have a constitution? Then they'll be able to, get over a lot of these issues. I mean, just adopt one already. And he started to laugh. And he said, well, it's not so easy. And, we left it at that.
Well, the Brits have managed without a written constitution.
That is true.
That
is true.
And sometimes these days I wonder how much certain of my colleagues are going to tamper with the American Constitution. So, yes, you are right.
Thank you for that. Oh, I've gotten 2 "you're rights" in the last few days. This is
but that's coming from me. A lot of people won't. That may end up getting you in trouble.
But we're on a roll. But as time is coming to a close, I just have one question for you, which I think I know the answer. And they told me don't ever ask questions if you don't know the answers. But have you been to Israel? Have you been to any concentration camps? How do you think the October 7th fiasco, disaster, unmitigated disaster, will impact feelings about Israel and Jews forthcoming?
Well, part of the answer is already contained in what we've discussed. Yes, I have been in Israel. I was in Israel in 2006 in December, not long after the war in the north with Lebanon. And I don't think it's really possible for anyone to have views on the conditions in the Middle East without having been in Israel. I was also on the West Bank. I spoke with Arab mayors, and I was in Sderot in the south the morning after a rocket attack. And we were in the home that was attacked, and you could still smell the explosives. So yes, I have been in Israel, and as I mentioned, have a family in Israel with whom we're very close. October the 7th was, for the Israelis, it was like September 11th for us and December 7th, 1941 for us. And you spoke just a couple of minutes ago about faith in Israel. That's a faith in a sovereign nation that is the beacon of modernity in a part of the world that sorely needs it. And it's also a democracy. And so just as America reacted after the attack on Pearl Harbor and after the attack on the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, the Israelis have acted in response to the brutality. The county executive Blakeman, and he and I are very different politically. Although I do like him. I like him personally. I find him amusing personally, which is kind of an interesting way to put it. But he sponsored an event for law enforcement and political folks. That was we got to see the video that had been taken by Hamas on October the 7th. And I wish I had not seen that. And I'm not urging people to see it, but that's hatred, that's intolerance. And that was bringing back the Shoah to a contemporary world. And so the Israelis will react, and I have great faith in the Israeli people, as well as I have great faith in the American people as well. This will have to work itself out, but we all have to take a position, defending Israel, and at the same time condemning democracy and calling out democracy when it could be doing a whole lot better.
Okay, I will go along with doing a lot better, not condemning. Democracy is still the way to move forward. So, what is the one takeaway, as time is fleeting, that you would like listeners to remember about our talk today?
We are all in this together. That's not only a Jewish thing, that's an American thing.
Amen. And Chuck, thank you so much. This has been just absolutely enlightening. And I want to thank everyone who has tuned into this episode of Antisemitism and the UN and in Society on hmTv. I appreciate you very much for joining us, Assemblyman Lavine, and to the audience. Please be sure to subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations. Until next time, make it our time. Take care and be well.
And Suzanne, may I add, Toda Rabbah, Ashena Dank, and thank you very much.
Thank you.